to the Munch UK platform. This has been created by Mira Kaushik for these COVID lockdown days, where the camera comes into the homes and we share some stories with you, especially the lesser known stories, because many of us have titles of director and editor, but to find the person behind that is really what we intend to do today. And this is what I'll try and satisfy. My name is SANJEEVINI Dutta. I was born in Delhi in 1954. My father was a government servant. He would have sat the Indian Administrative Service exam and joined the railways. And in fact, the paper he sat is lodged at the British Library. A cousin at the JNU researching this found his exam results. So that is British India. My mother was born in Lahore. She was a very beautiful woman with a very fine aesthetic sense. The clothes she wore, I think she would have approved of my handy, my ikat print, because this is what she sought saris from different parts of India. And I wouldn't say there was music and dance in the house, but I would have gone with my parents to the Gurdwara every Sunday, and of course the singing of the ragis is very much a part of the Sikh prayers. And many years later I made wonderful friends in the UK who have such a fine tradition of singing and making music, which starts in the Gurdwara. I have an older sister and a younger brother. My brother was a very formidable intellect. He was very active in the world of theatre. As a real youngster, as a 12-year-old, he was directing the play Baratzad. My sister brought the world of glamour. She was a model coordinator. She worked in the fashion industry. So those aspects of the Bombay society also came to the fringes of my consciousness. My real exposure to the world of arts was through a very special school in Delhi. It is called Shiv Niketan. I don't know if Miriam is familiar with it, but it was run by a German lady, Mrs. Goba, who had become a Shiva Bhakt. And every morning we sang, Suno, Hamara Naam Hai Shiv Niketan. Interesting story is that my name, Sanjeevini, was given by Mrs. Goba, because when my parents went to register me at school, she turned to them in horror and said, you can't possibly call your daughter Sanjeev. That's no name for a girl. So Sanjeevini was given to me, and I'm really proud of that name because it is quite unusual and quite unique. At Shiv Niketan, we had arts at the center of the curriculum. We had perhaps only about 3 hours of academic work, and the rest of the time we wrote stories, we performed plays, we created shadow puppets, and it truly was an enchanted time. I even remember being taken to the Taj Mahal on an overnight trip. We were only 8-year-olds, and we went to listen to classical music outside the Pearl Mosque in the moonlight. You know, how many head teachers would have that kind of imagination? So I really feel I owe my love of the arts to that exposure at Shiv Niketan. At the age of 9, my father was transferred to Bombay, and I was kind of snatched from this very cultural atmosphere of Delhi, and I was put into a convent school, Fort Convent, and as you can imagine, we had the Angelus at midday. We didn't have to attend Mass, but we had a very boring subject called moral science. And it took me a few years to find my feet in Bombay and to find my individuality again. So by the time I was like 14, maybe I started looking around and seeing what activities I could get involved in. Bombay is a very cosmopolitan city. It is full of all kinds of artistic activities. The theatre group were putting on plays. I remember they performed both theatre of the absurd, but also plays like British Karnat's Muhammad bin Tughlaq, about the Mad King Tughlaq, which is played by Kabir Bedi. I attended the Alliance Française and saw, the cream of the French directors, Godard, René, Truffaut. As a kind of 13, 14-year-old, I didn't realize what an education I was getting. Dance came to me through a friend. My very dear friend Anjali was learning Kathak, and I just sort of copied her, as often you do. When you're young, you do what your best friend does. And he, in fact, was disabled. He had a walking stick. And it never occurred to me to question how I was learning dance from this person. He was given to me, and I did that for 2 years until I had an experience of seeing young Shankar Behera. It was the NCPA. He was performing with his student Flora Agatha, who is now in Montpellier. And he has a very slender body, long hair, his movements were so dynamic, his body so sinuous. I think he was doing the Dasavata, and I think I fell in love with him and the dance. So I'm going to show you this photograph of what Shankarji looked like when he was a very young man who was just starting his journey as a teacher in the big bad city of Bombay. In fact, he taught Pratima Bedi to start with, and of course we know that from those early beginnings where Odissi was being popularized in Bombay society, Pratima Devi has gone on to leave the most amazing legacy in form of Nityagram. So this was myself as a 16-year-old. I was enrolled at St. Xavier's College. I love poetry and English. I think that was really my first love. But I thought that I wouldn't really get a job at the end of it because I wasn't good enough. And I decided to do psychology and social work as my master's degree. At the time, politics was rife at university. It was the 70s. It was time when we were looking at the inequalities in India and wondering what kind of development model India was going to follow. We looked at China and we thought, wow, China has really advanced. Would that be the right model? But what would we do if we didn't have democracy in India? So these are really kind of live arguments, and I think I'm very surprised these days when young people, especially the Thatcherite generation, just don't get involved in politics. So politics, social work, community work was just another strand which has fed into my commitment to the arts later on. And now I'm 21 and I've come to London, and suburban London after Bombay looks very dull indeed. So once again, I have to find a way of connecting to life in the UK, and after working in social services for 3 years, which I decided I didn't have the right temperament for, because I think you have to be very grounded and have a very practical sense to be able to help people. So I clearly wasn't suited for that, and after my son Kunal was born, I decided I'd start dancing again. And I would visit India every year, and Shankarji would come to the UK. And from that time, my first full-length solo performance at the Bhavan took place in February 1983. And I can truly state that was like my Manch Pradesh. And I have a photograph here. And that's taken by the wonderful friend of dance, Ray Clark. He was so well networked. in the dance community those days. And of course, he was the one who then introduced me to Bishaka Sarkar, who became a lifelong friend, a dance partner, and my touchstone. So when we see things together, we have to discuss and analyze them together. There was a movement at the time in education, started by the Inner London Education Authority, because it was again a fairly left-wing organisation. They were looking to see how to absorb the immigrants that had come into the country, how to validate their backgrounds, and multicultural arts in education give the opening to many artists to earn a living from taking their art form into schools, into communities, and sharing a bit of that culture, so the values of the culture would come through in the art form that you did. And I spent a good 10 years giving workshops in schools. I'd like to show you just a photograph, engaging young boys in dance and really trying to analyze what it was in our dance form. It is a classical form. It's acquired with years of training. How could you take elements from it and make it something interactive for young people? And Bishaka Sarkar and I, we came up with the video, Dance, Dance Wherever You May Be. This was based on a song, a hymn that children in school sing, and we thought that would be a good way to connect the sacred roots of Indian dance with movement that we could bring to schools. And I'm very happy to say that for at least a decade, many schools in the UK bought that video. So now an opportunity came to apply for a position as a dance development officer in Bedford. Bedford is a county just north of London, about 50 miles away. And in fact, earlier, when Rabin was a management student at Cranfield, I had worked in social services there. And little was I to know that this place would become so important for me some years on. So Sujata Banerjee and I job shared. It was one of the very early examples of a job share. We both had young children, and it was wonderful because we could bundle them off in the car over the dreaded half-term holidays, and they could keep each other company. We developed many exciting projects. Just two of them which I must highlight. One was the production of the Mahabharata. It was a song, dance, musical production. It was done for the Year of Opera and Musical Theatre. In fact, Nitin Soni was the composer there, and a fantastic director, Nona Shepherd. Sujata has a real insight into Indian mythology and philosophy, and what she was able to bring to that really gave the production an edge of understanding the very complex dilemmas of the characters of the Mahabharata, making it accessible to big communities. It was a grand production. The last episode was in the grounds of Lincoln Castle, the Battle of Kalakshetra. There was a massive papier-mâché elephant, drums, wonderful acting, and that, yes, was a big highlight of our time at Kadam. Secondly, the Kadam Summer School, which we started in 1989, in a fairly small way at the time. The idea of an intense week where tutors and students would share the same space, work hard in the day, and socialize in the evening with informal concerts and performances. That was something that many of you who would have come would have very fond memories of. Because the idea was so successful, when Kadam could no longer sustain the budget it took, it went to Milap Fest, and also I'm very pleased to say that the Odyssey class that started in Bedford with 5-6-year-olds, all white middle class girls, because at the time the community, who were many working class families from Muslim and Sikh backgrounds, didn't really come to dance class. So we have this wonderful dancer, Katie Ryan. You might see a photograph of the Odyssey ensemble here with Kali Chandrasekaram, who has been so pivotal in Kadam. We have Katie, Mariam, and of course Elena Catalano, who is doing so much work in Odyssey today. Sujata left in 2000, and then an opportunity came for taking over the magazine for South Asian dance. We've had continuous publication with the Aditi News from the 1980s, and it was a real shame that when Aditi folded, this magazine had no home. So Anita Srivastav, who worked with us at the time, she made a bid for the magazine. She said, well, Sanjeevini has a background through mantra, so it wouldn't be a bad fit for Kadam. And I'm very happy to say that in 2002 we published the first print issue of Pulse. It has Akram Khan on the cover, and it was looking at dance and film. Chitra Sundaram was a very important person who edited Pulse for 4 years, and some milestone issues that were commissioned by her. I'm just going to share with you. You might recognize some of the artists there. This issue is looking at non-Asians doing Indian dance, and it starts right with the history of American modern dance and the early contributors who looked towards the Indian subcontinent to give them ideas of how they could break with the very rigid ballet tradition. So we had 4 years of Chitra editing Pulse, but in 2007, Kadam lost its funding, and it was no longer tenable for us to have a paid position of editor. And that's the time which I took over. And yes, I've done that now for 12 years, and it has been a joy. I have a wonderful creative team. Simon Richardson, who contributes the most amazing photographs and has gone on to become one of the finest photographers of South Asian dance in the country. Our editor, Pritpal Ajimal. So we are only a small team, and I've always had wonderful assistants. Gopa Roy at the moment, who's been helping me. So within the small team, we managed to produce quite a lot, for which I have to thank our wonderful writers. Magdalene Gorin, who's just hopefully watching, Sital Gahir, who's gone on to work for the Arts Council, Johnny Harrison, established writers, music writer Ken Hunt, and Donald Hotera and Sanjay Roy. So, but we are always open. We have, we look forward to people sending us their contributions, happy to develop authors. We do training schemes. We've run many courses in critical viewing and critical writing. So Pulse is quite a small hub. And one of the things which also fires us is looking at the situation, looking at the politics. We commissioned an issue I'm very proud of, which is looking at the Hindutva before the current government came into power, before the last Indian elections. And in fact, Jasmine Lail, who's done a thesis on the way RSS has infiltrated cultural institutions in the UK, which is really shocking, and these things happen under the ground. We've also commissioned an issue on Me Too, and at the moment we're looking at dance through the lens of race and culture. So alongside the performance reviews, the profiles of artists. We have some wonderful profiles. I'm thinking of two in particular. Janvi Harrison wrote a very moving profile of her teacher, Nina Rajarani, and another one of Dharmvirji, where I just remember him saying that my grandmother worried so much about me running around in the sun on my bicycle. She thought I should eat properly and put a little pot of ghee with my chapatis. It's just little stories like that which have made it such a joy to work in Pulse. I think I've probably said everything I need to say. I'd like to invite you to my home now. I'm going to show you just some of the images and photographs which define. Right, there's one more thing I'd like to say. I want to pay tribute to where the art form is heading, where the next generation, how they are developing their work. I see something new. I see them trying to change their form from within. I'm thinking about people like Amina Khayyam, who has done stories of women, unheard voices. I'm thinking of Sita Patel's Not Today's Yesterday, really politically provocative, Shane's humor, Akash's wonderful piece in which he looked at the refugee situation and working with Turkish dancers. So these are all really exciting new developments in dance, and this is what kind of fires me in Pulse to continue to support these artists and to talk and discuss their work. So I've already shown you the Odyssey Ensemble, but I'm also going to start at this end and to once again highlight the work of Simon Richardson. May brings Maven Coup. He does a calendar every year, which I'm very proud that he presents me with. This is my little multicultural shrine. From my time as a publisher visiting the Bologna Book Fair, I found this wonderful transparency painted on glass, which is the Yashoda looking down at Krishna and Balaram. And she's a Dutch lady in the 30s. She must have become enamored with the story of Krishna. I'm going to finish by sharing a little bit of a Pallavi with you. I would like to show you Jagannathji, which is done by a child in a rural school in Cheshire. Whoever thought that the presiding deity of Odissi would be found in a village school? My Guruji abstracted here, a photograph taken by Simon Richardson and put into this abstracted form by Pritpal Ajimal. Just an image of myself in former days, again taken by Simon Richardson. I think Sujata and myself were Simon's first models of Indian dance. And even in my entrance, I have an image. This is the photographer Suran Gunatilake. And please come into my living space now. And I'm going to just share with you the opening sequence of Savari Pallavi. I have joined a dance class with Elena Catalano, and at the moment we are all dancing on Zoom on Friday evenings. It's a strange and wonderful experience, but it brings me back in touch with the training that I have received in Odissi, which kind of forms the base of my work. It's the base of my passion. It's my road into understanding the culture and philosophy of India. It is the discipline, it's the aesthetics, it is a social activity that you share with other people. so that your dance class friends do become like your family. And today I'd like to say to each one of you that you've been part of my life. I'm so enriched by this dance. I feel that, you know, from this little I received, I have been able to make so much of it, because it fires your passion. The physical activity fires your passion, it fires your imagination, and Kadam also has given me that kind of it's a canvas on which you can paint. And some of the productions that I'm really proud of have come from that passion. The Rose and the Bulbul, where I was able to use the words of Bulleh Shah to connect me to my heritage, which comes from Punjab, which I have never acknowledged, but I was able to do that. I met this wonderful singer, Arif Azhar, and we used him to sing the song in Rose and Bulbul. So I'm going to finish by dancing for you a little bit, very informally. In fact, I decided I won't fiddle with the music. I'm just going to try and hum or sing and just do the best I can. The dancer may grow old, but the dance never grows old. The beauty of classical dance is it comes back again and again. It sustains, it survives, it gives us the strength to carry on. And I hope to be able to pass it on to the next generation. And now I would just like to thank the Munch platform for this opportunity, because these have been such interesting interludes of meeting artists, knowing little details about themselves we never have had time. So the lockdown has been, in some ways, very creative, and has given Mira a wonderful way to continue her work after coming out of academy. And her team of volunteers, I have to say, have been so patient, especially with my generation, to navigate us through. So thank you, Subbalakshmi. I'm not going to mention all names because I will slip, but you've been a wonderful team of volunteers. And I wish this platform great success. Tomorrow is the turn of Payal Ramchandani. She's a Kuchipudi dancer from Newcastle, and she'll be telling you her story. So thank you all for watching, and lots of love. Bye.